Examining the impact of collaboration and shared leadership practices in professional learning communities, or PLCs, by Kimberly B. Myers, under the study of Dr. Christopher J. Childs. Currently, there is a lack of quality teachers in STEM education and in other subjects as well. Teacher attrition is becoming more prevalent, and it's even higher in lower income schools. Why is that? Well, studies have shown that there's a lack of attention and neglect for teachers. Other studies have shown that teachers are leaving the field just after 5 years of teaching. There's a need for professional development and collaboration that supports learning and growth that will enhance teaching practices. After the Great Recession ended in 2009, teacher preparation programs saw a decrease in their enrollment by approximately 240,000 teachers per year. STEM subjects and special education had the greatest hits. So this is very serious, and these losses not only impact the federal and state government, but also hold grave implications at the local level involving universities, school districts, schools, administrators, teachers, parents, and students. There is a great need for teachers to be able to train and collaborate with other educators and professionals in the field to increase their content knowledge and teacher-to-teacher collaboration. This will improve overall student achievement as a result. So, within this study, professional learning communities were used as a tool to ensure these high-quality teaching and learning experiences to help foster professional learning, growth, and collaboration. PLCs involve collaborative teams that have shared commitments that are focused on continually improving and being assessed by student success in learning. Forcing top-down initiatives for PLC teams can have negative consequences on students, teachers, and on overall school culture. Educators must ensure collaborative experiences that involve shared leadership and responsibility between teachers and administrators at the school level. Schools have a history of promoting autonomy and isolation within their own classrooms, which can make collaboration difficult. Schools today lack a focus or a coordinated effort of teachers that focus on strategies for ensuring student success in learning in the classroom. To help retain quality teachers and improve collaboration that focuses on improved teaching and learning, this study examined the collaborative qualities and shared leadership practices of high-performing PLC teams. The research questions for this study were: what themes of collaboration and shared leadership emerged in the Biology and Algebra 1 PLCs? 2. How do shared leadership practices during PLC meetings impact perceived teacher practice in the classroom? And 3. What is the relationship between student achievement and perceived teaching practices in a shared leadership model versus a PLC without a shared leadership practice? An effective PLC seeks to enhance teachers' knowledge and skills that will lead to improved teaching and performance in the classroom. Some of the characteristics of effective PLCs that have been outlined in literature include having a shared mission, vision, and values, collective inquiry, collaborative teams, action orientation and experimentation, continuous improvement, and results orientation. Implementing effective PLC practices involves creating a shared mission, vision, and values to enhance teaching and learning in the classroom. The vision of the school district and school campus provide direction for PLCs as they use the student data to create their goals. Each PLC team should create SMART goals to help better meet the needs of all students in the classroom. PLC SMART goals include specific, measurable, attainable, results-oriented, and time-bound goals. Effective PLCs place this emphasis on results for improving student achievement through reflective professional inquiry. Collective inquiry is described as including teaching and learning best practices, examination of current practices, and a collaborative evaluation of students' progress towards mastering the classroom learning goals. Inclusive membership has been described as having a collective responsibility or commitment towards achieving the PLC team goals towards student success and learning. Having a collective responsibility and commitment to student mastery and learning helps teachers improve their own knowledge and skills as well. Continuous improvement involves the sustainability of collaborative practices where individuals seek to discover new ways of accomplishing PLC practices. Maintaining continuous improvement is an ongoing practice of gathering evidence of student learning, developing strategies and implementation of strategies for improved student learning, analysis of student learning data, and applying new knowledge as the learning process continues. Also, results orientation focuses on student results through the use of these shared formative and summative assessments to help develop and refine these effective instructional strategies. One of the key themes of collaboration in PLCs involves working jointly on group activities and shared tasks that will benefit student learning. Effective PLC teams collaborate through collective inquiry using student data-driven practices that helps the team focus on specific areas needed for growth and strategies for meeting student mastery levels. PLCs create a positive, supportive environment for teachers to make shared decisions, which will guarantee positive outcomes for all students and their learning. In building a collaborative culture, PLCs should practice shared leadership, where teachers and administrators share common goals to support student improvement in teaching and learning. Effective PLCs involve teachers, teacher leaders, and administrators working together to support rigorous instructional standards and data-driven practices that will enhance teaching and learning in the classroom. Within PLCs, teachers are able to discuss relative teaching theories, instructional practices, solutions to difficult problems, along with other meaningful discussions that support classroom practices. While this study emphasized best practices when implementing PLCs, the focus of the study was actually to determine what themes of collaboration and shared leadership emerged and determine the effects of these practices on teacher instruction and student achievement in the classroom. Constructivism refers to the construction of knowledge where individuals use past experiences and application to construct new knowledge and understanding. Piaget emphasized that learning is a natural process that takes place through active experiences. Vygotsky developed social constructivism, which highlights collaboration within a social learning context. Social constructivism involves actively learning as an individual constructs new knowledge in a participatory environment. Bandura developed the social learning theory that highlights learning as a cognitive process, which takes place socially through direct observation and experience. Bandura described individuals' learning as a continual interactive process involving one's environment, behavior, and cognition. Through interactive, collaborative learning in PLCs, teachers can further improve their content and pedagogical knowledge they need to enhance their teaching practices. Shared leadership practices are comprised of collaborative experiences that involve principals and teachers with a shared accountability and decision-making practices that will work towards improving the school's goals. Shared leadership and shared decision-making practices involve a school's collaborative culture where multiple people are involved in making the decisions that impact instructional practice and student learning. Instead of having a top-down leadership approach, where all decisions are made by one administrator or multiple administrators, shared leadership involves all team members working together to make decisions that will lead to student success and learning. Shared leadership practices in PLCs have been shown to improve school climate as well as student achievement. This study used Lambert's 2002 shared leadership model as a conceptual framework for determining which shared leadership practices were being implemented within PLCs, and it also examined what other practices were still lacking within these collaborative groups. This study compared two groups, specifically biology and algebra 1, and observed whether these shared leadership practices. The stakeholders within this study included the principal, assistant principals, and other administrators at the school where the study was being conducted. Additionally, it included PLC team leaders and teachers.
I'm Greg Topper, and my role as an AP is to be an appraiser over the teachers in there, but also to sit in there and make sure that the teachers are working together, sort of shared learning on data-driven type of assessments. I have the social studies PLC team, and our focus this year has been twofold. One is common assessments and using benchmarks and using the information, the data from those benchmarks to drive the learning, spiraling back to the areas where we need to work a little harder to get student scores up. And the second part to that again is working through best practices, specifically making sure we're implementing parts of the flipped classroom, and also it's going to be nice with regard to the teachers and combining their efforts in a shared learning or collaborative effort into making it better for our students with best practices and also data-driven learning.
Spiraling back to the areas.
This program was implemented at an inner-city public high school in South Texas, where the goal was to integrate and sustain these collaborative practices into the school's current PLC teams. The participants included teachers and administrators in the Biology and Algebra 1 departments. Biology and Algebra 1 were chosen since they were both STEM subjects, both taught 9th grade students. Both courses were end-of-course tested subjects, which are the STAR exam, the high-stakes testing, and both teams had strong PLC teacher leaders and administrative support. During the study, the researcher examined the effectiveness of PLC practices, specifically looking at collaboration and shared leadership practices. The different phases of the investigation included participant recruitment and informed consent, teacher semi-structured interviews, PLC observations, STAR testing, data analysis, and conclusion. So during the first phase of the projects, the teachers were scheduled to participate in a qualitative semi-structured interview. These interviews were held at the end of the fall semester and lasted no more than 30 to 45 minutes. The teacher and administrator interviews included approximately 10 to 15 primary questions and probing responses that were used to help gain responses about collaboration and shared leadership practices in PLCs. Additionally, there were observations in the professional learning communities. There were 8 observations and field notes were taken to document the dialogue and collaboration within each of the PLCs. These lasted approximately 1 hour and required no extra work from the participants. The data gathered by these observations provided insight about collaboration and shared leadership practices within the PLCs and about teachers' perceptions of their own instructional practices. Next, there were student achievement scores. So during the month of May, the students took the STAR exam in both the Biology and Algebra 1 subjects, which was used to determine their student performance scores. Lastly, there was the data analysis and conclusion. So the data was analyzed from the semi-structured interviews and the PLC observations, and along with other artifacts used to help address the themes of collaboration and shared leadership practices. Also, they used STAR test scores from the Biology and Algebra 1 classes, and these were both looked at, I guess you could say merged, to examine the relationship between teacher practices and student achievement when using a shared leadership model in PLCs. This study used an embedded case study design to explore collaboration and shared leadership practices and to examine the impact of these practices on perceived teaching practices and student achievement. Having more than one data source allowed the researcher to triangulate the findings as they applied to shared leadership in the conceptual model being used. This further authenticated the results of the study. While the study mostly focused on qualitative data sources, the quantitative data was also collected using the STAR exams. And in doing so, the researcher was able to examine how these practices impacted student learning in the classroom. So to further investigate these research questions, there were 14 participants in the Biology and Algebra 1 departments, and they were sampled at a highly diverse urban school in South Texas. The student population at this high school included over 3,400 students, with 74% of the population being minority and 48% being economically disadvantaged. So this study was an embedded case study, which was a mixed methods design, and it collected qualitative and quantitative data throughout the school year. The qualitative data that was collected, again, included PLC observations, teacher and administrator semi-structured interviews. The interviews were recorded and transcribed verbatim, and they used peer debriefing and member checks. Additionally, the observations were persistent observations, and field notes were used and collected, and also artifacts for trustworthiness and credibility. Also, there was student performance data using the STAR exams. So for data analysis, this study used an inductive approach to further deduce themes that emerged from the qualitative data. An a priori coding system was derived from the conceptual framework using the shared leadership model. The researcher then used within-case and cross-case theme development to further analyze the data. Quantitative data was also used during the STAR exam that was collected, and it looked at student performance as it pertained to that specific subject area. A Wilcoxon sign rank test was then used to convert and compare the scores of each of the PLC teams to show whether or not there was a significant difference between the student performance scores in biology and Algebra 1. Validity and trustworthiness were established through several different methods. In speaking of the qualitative data, confirmability was achieved through data triangulation. Transferability was used by providing thick, rich descriptions. Credibility was gained by using triangulation of the data from multiple sources, and dependability was established by creating an audit trail and using the code-recode strategy. Additionally, the STAR exam was used because of its consistent validity and reliability in research findings. The results of this study showed several findings that pointed back to the shared leadership framework, including principal and teachers participating together as mutual learners, having a shared vision and goals, using inquiry-based use of information to help guide the discussion within the PLCs, having collaboration and collective responsibility, reflective practices using data, and high student achievement. Additionally, the quantitative data showed that there was a statistical significance between the Biology and Algebra 1 scores that did have a median effect size. So just looking at the median scores from the Biology and Algebra 1 tests, the biology test was higher. So in addressing the first research question, what are the themes of collaboration and shared leadership that emerged from the Biology and Algebra 1 PLCs? Both teams were able to describe positive characteristics of their PLCs and their team members, as well as the norms for the team meetings. They were also able to describe data-driven practices that they used during these meetings, and the biology team members really discussed using these strengths and deficits to help provide instructional strategies for the students and how they're going to use those in their classroom. Both team members also discussed having strong relationships with one another and having a collective responsibility for the team. The biology team did spend more time lesson planning and collaborating overall, and the Algebra 1 team often left 20 to 30 minutes early during the observations. Although both of these teams expressed having shared goals, really only the biology team continuously discussed and revised their PLC SMART goals throughout the year. The second research question was, how does shared leadership practices during PLC meetings impact perceived teacher practice in the classroom? So in answering these questions, both of the teams really described how they shared different instructional practices in the classroom and how they used these to help spiral or reteach the concepts that were difficult for the students. The discussions and contributions were said to enhance teaching practices in the classroom. Teachers on both the teams discussed how members shared ideas, assessments, materials, technology resources, and classroom experiences. However, this was reported more often from members on the biology PLC team. The newer teachers also seemed to grow a lot during the course of the year with regards to their instructional practice and classroom management due to the discussions that they were having in these PLCs. The Algebra 1 meetings sometimes ended too early, which sometimes limited the meaningful discussions in the PLC meetings. For the third research question, it was, what is the relationship between student achievement and perceived teaching practice in a PLC shared leadership model versus one without shared leadership practice? In this study, it became obvious that the Algebra 1 said to have shared leadership and norms and PLC SMART goals, but they didn't really practice those things. They just kind of said that they did. So the concept of sharing was really mentioned most often when discussing interactions that led to enhanced teaching practices, but both the team members described sharing and having a collective responsibility to the team. However, this was reported and observed more often during the biology PLCs. During the PLCs, each of the team members made specific contributions to the lesson plans and the data-driven discussions. Most of the new teachers really followed these discussions up with questions for the more tenured teachers, and this was also observed most often during the biology PLCs. Biology also added they discussed quite a bit modeling instructional practices often and talked about ways for differentiating the instruction to help meet the needs of all the students in the classroom. So these descriptions of perceived teaching practices were shown to be reflected in the student scores, since the biology team did have a significantly higher Met standards rate on the STAR exam than Algebra 1 did. So in evaluating this study, further insight on collaboration and shared leadership practices on teaching and learning in the classroom was actually gained. It was a unique study since it added to the literature by examining student performance, and there were several key components of collaboration and shared leadership practices that are valuable in enhancing teacher instruction and student achievement in learning. So the study ultimately will help develop and retain effective teachers in STEM education and also enhance teacher growth, professional collaboration, and ultimately student learning in the classroom. And here are the references for the study. The end.